When it's time to start reading chips, we have to enable the reader. Now, I'm sure you've watched the other video that talks about connecting. That's really the first step. We have to make sure we're connected, which means the software on the laptop is communicating with the hardware. Once that's done, we can enable the reader. Let's talk about what happens when we actually enable. Enabling the reader turns on the transmitters and the receivers in the hardware, and it creates an RF zone where we're reading the chips that are within that zone. That zone could be anywhere from 10 to perhaps 30 feet in front of a finish line, and obviously the width of your trussing. So as chips cross into that zone, they're being read. Enabling essentially says to the reader, start doing that process. Start reading those chips and storing that information in memory on the reader. Later, in another video, you'll learn how to collect the chip reads, and that's where we go out and retrieve them. But enabling simply says, turn on the transmitters, look for the chips that are within that RF zone, and begin reading them. So let's do it. We're going to enable the reader now. It's going to ask us, are you sure you're ready to enable? Yes, I am. And then it's going to ask a very important question. Have you set your database mode and or your minimum split to the proper setting? We've talked about database mode in another video, and that's where the Jaguar decides how to write the chip times into what columns of the database. And minimum split, of course, there's some rules around when we will and will not write a chip read. So Jaguar is asking me as I enable, are you sure you have all that set correctly? I do, so I'm going to say yes. The next question is, do you wish to clear all the stats, including any of the chip reads that happen to be inside of the reader? Now let me explain something that's very important. If for some reason you were having a problem and maybe you restarted the Jaguar software and you know that there are reads sitting out on the reader and they're waiting for you, you don't want to clear the stats in the chip reads. The reader has non-volatile memory and it can store reads for quite a long time. Will it always store reads if the power is turned off the reader? No, not necessarily. However, we do have software on the reader that will try to actually do that. It'll try to hold on to those reads even if power is lost. It's not guaranteed, but we make a best effort to do that. So when I'm starting up here, Jaguar is saying, you might have some reads out on the reader. Do you want to clear them? So if I was starting a race for the first time, in other words, I was at the 5K finish line, it's the beginning of the race, and I know there should be no reads out there that I should be pulling in, I'm going to always clear the stats. I'm always going to clear out the reader and sort of refreshen it, if you will, for this event. If I was re-enabling during the middle of a race due to some failure or problem that I had, I wouldn't clear the stats. I'd say, no, don't clear those because I may need those reads. In this case, we're going to pretend we're at a 5K finish line. It's a brand new race. I'm going to say yes. It says, are you sure you want to do that? I am. Finally, what will happen is in the black window down here, you'll see it gives some indication that it's working. So it'll say Reader 1 stats were cleared. It now enabled the reader, and it says Reader 1 is now reading chips. Now don't panic because you don't see chip reads coming in the bib history window or in our announcer window. Remember, what we've really done here is we've turned on the transmitters and receivers in the hardware. We haven't started collecting chip reads yet. Once we select collect, then the chip reads will start coming in. Now, that doesn't mean we're not reading. Again, let me remind you that once you enable, the system is absolutely reading chips right now in its RF zone, and it's storing that information out on the reader. And if we decide that we don't want to read those chips for whatever reason, maybe we're done testing, we could click on Disable Reader, and it would simply say, okay, turn off chip reading, and we get right back to where we were before. Again, if I wanted to re-enable the reader, just like I did a moment ago, I'd say, okay, go ahead and turn it back on now. Everything is set correctly. I'm ready to start reading chips. And there you go. You're right back to where you were. We're once again reading chips, storing them on the reader, and the reader is waiting for Jaguar to begin collecting those chip reads.